everyone, and welcome to Previously in the Multiverse, Episode 6. I am Peter. Joining me, as always, is Connor.
That was some real pizzazz going on there.
You got some pizzazz. We're into quarantine, baby. Okay, some pizzazz going.
It is. It's Paddy's Day as we're recording this, and I'm having to be very socially responsible and get hammered at home.
Yes. So, quarantine episode. Probably be a bunch of quarantine episodes for the next while. As we have no idea how long that's going to last, and we'll see. But luckily, reading comics and talking about them is pretty easy. Even if both of us get sick, we could probably still do this.
Yeah, barring like being so sick that we don't want to record and talk. Yeah, we can do this.
There's maybe like a rough patch in the middle of it where we'll be coughing too much to bother, but
it's probably like a 3 or 4 day period where you're like, yeah, we're going to take a pass on that.
But even if I need to self-isolate, I can still come on and talk about shit. It's fine.
The dream scenario for me right now is Paige gets ill. She develops a cough. Nothing too serious, just a cough. And she has to stay inside for 7 days.
I just want to point out here, the start of that was, the ideal scenario here is that Paige gets sick. that was the start of that sentence.
Yes. No. Because our government's advice is very specific here. So if Paige gets sick, she has to stay inside for 7 days. But I have to stay inside for 14 days. So as long as I don't get sick and cut that short. But I mean, I can get sick for 14 days. Up to 21 if I get sick on that 14th day. So that's the dream scenario.
All right, we talk about comics on this show. This is our sister show to Comics from the Multiverse. Comics from the Multiverse, of course, is our main DC Comics podcast that is around 200 episodes now. I think this is one that's going up just before 199 is, so we're just about to hit there. But this show is where we talk about old DC comics. This is where we talk about some previous runs. We work through them one issue at a time. Coming up on this episode, we'll be talking about Batman 404, which is notable because it's the start of Batman Year 1. That is our post-crisis Batman slot, basically meaning that we started with the first issue that's considered post-crisis, and we're just working through all the Batman books. Well, I say all, the prominent ones from then on. So
right now, that's Batman and Detective.
Right now it's Batman Detective, but it won't be that long before it's also including Legends of the Dark Knight and Shadow of the Bat would be the other two at the time, I think.
I suspect any essential tie-ins if we get to any events that need them.
Yeah. I think there's definitely some where I'm like, nah, those issues of Nightwing can just be saved for when we do Nightwing.
Oh, I'm sure, but there's probably a couple here or there that is like, no, we actually need to read this, it's the next part.
Oh, sure, yeah, but having read some of No Man's Land and having read a fair bit of Nightfall and stuff, a lot of those issues are actually pretty just kind of, they're just tie-ins, they're not actual parts of the story. But yeah, so that said, there's an argument that we should still read some of those, but regardless. So yeah, Batman, post-crisis, they were working through Wonder Woman New 52, the Bryan Azzarello run. We got issue 6 of that today. We got the Flash 65, which is the next issue in Mark Waid's Flash run, which is a bit of an epic. So final part of the Year 1 story in that, funnily enough, as we kick off the other Year 1, which I did not remember only being 4 issues. I want to point that out right now. I thought that was 6 issues. See, when I got to the end of this issue and it said end, I was like, wait, what? It's over?
I think that's the end of the issue, not the end of the story, because unless the Year 1 bit ends and it's still born to run. That's
the end of the Year 1 bit, because the next issue is an Aquaman guest issue.
I should check that my trade has that, because I have like a random hardcover edition of this that I've not been like looking at the issues.
The next issue's got Aquaman on the front, so it is. And I've read that issue before. It's a pretty standalone issue, so.
Huh. I'm gonna have to check that. That's what my book.
There is another annual coming up in this big thick trade, but I don't know if the Aquaman one's the annual. I don't think it is, but I could be wrong. Regardless, there's not a time.
I'm just gonna check while you yabber on about the rest of the books.
All right, well, there we got Birds of Prey Manhunt issue 4, next issue in the original Birds of Prey run by Chuck Dixon. We got GSA issue 5, just doing the GSA run, Jeff Johns' run, even though he's not on the book yet. And then we got Action Comics 769. This was the first of 2 Patreon votes. This was for Superman Emperor Joker. This is the 4th issue in that story. So we're doing that. And then finally, the last of the voting was for Stephanie Brown Batgirl, and this week is issue 2 of that series by Brian Q. Miller.
just for the record, I checked. You're right. This collection that is just labeled, Born to Run, includes 62 to 65, Annual 8, Speed Force 1, and 80-page Giant issue 1.
That sounds like a bunch of random crap from later.
It very well might be.
Yeah, none of that's next.
Yeah.
Because even the annual coming up in the trade that I'm reading that's in order is at like annual 5, not 8.
Yeah, this is a random collection thing that you can't see on the camera right now, but there's like old. It's one of those with the spines making images, so they have to be a certain thickness usually.
Yeah. Well, that's what's coming up. That's what's coming up on this week's show. So, my plan there was to just remind everyone what runs we're reading, just in case someone stumbled into this episode as the first. I didn't necessarily mean to spend so much time doing it, but that's Connor's fault for trying to add more details on.
I only did it on one.
It was enough. All right, let's get into the books then. We got Batman issue 404, not found. So this is...
That was terrible.
This is Frank Miller writing, back when Frank Miller wasn't like a name to fear when he was writing the comic book. Although art is by Dave Mazzucchelli, if I'm pronouncing that right. Or is it, sorry?
Go on.
Mazzucchelli.
Mazzucchelli, I think.
Mazzucchelli, that sounds right. There you go. You know what? One name should not have...
You're adding in an extra A after the Zs.
My problem with this is that one name should not have 3 double letters. It plays tricks in my eyes. I can't process it.
That is fair.
I can't process it. All right, so this is the start of year 1, which is a book that obviously we've both read before because it's Batman year 1. In fact, this was literally the first comic book I ever read.
It wasn't for me, but what I think is probably notable, at least definitely on my part, and I suspect on yours, the first time we've ever read it not in one sitting.
Oh, yes.
And like spaced out the issues like it was actually released and is a completely different experience.
If you'd asked me what the end of like the first issue was before I read it for this, I would never have been able to tell you what part it was.
Yeah, I've read this book probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. A reasonable amount. And I have never read it except in just sitting down and reading the entire thing. Maybe I've taken a break somewhere in the middle, but not issue by issue. No, never. Yeah.
So Batman 404. It's kind of funny actually. Just like I'm imagining like getting comics in the 80s and it being like, oh, by the way, we're doing a 4-issue arc of Batman's origin, and it's not even that weird to think about. Obviously, we did 0 year for like 11 months in 52. Oh, God,
I think it feels weird because so far what we've experienced is 2-issue arcs at most.
Yes. So 4 feels like an epic.
In comparison to what we've had so far, it really does.
Yeah, what's interesting though is just how much the tone's changed. Now, obviously, we enjoyed the last couple issues of Batman. We very much praised issue 402. 402, we thought was, that's actually really good. It's quite surprising. But what's interesting is just how the difference... It still looked like a comic from the time, and then you go to this one, and right away it has this gritty, grungy, down-to-earth feeling.
I think so much of the key difference that we're going to talk about in the art is the colours.
Oh yeah, it's not those bright blue capes anymore or anything like that. It's
this really muted colour palette, lots of dark purples, and the yellows don't stand out. They're like really faded. It's so different.
Now, obviously, we actually ended up liking the last couple of issues quite a bit. So I'm not saying this to sort of insult the storytelling, because it was actually much closer to a good Batman story, or was a good Batman story, than I was expecting. So I don't really mean to throw shade on it with what I'm about to say, but it really kind of feels like before there was like a kid's cartoon, and then someone turned on the HBO version. Like you open the first page of this, it's like, oh, this is the adult version of Batman. we're reading like a...
Yeah. I just want to give a shout out. Richmond Lewis did the colours. I feel like, he deserves a particular shout out, given how key the colours are in defining the feel and tone of how different this feels to everything that we've just read before this.
It wasn't actually that bad, but you were digitizing a touch there, just a touch.
I thought you were saying like I was saying it weirdly. I was like, I don't think I did.
No. I mean, it's starting to clear up already. It was just clear the connection was,
Yeah.
stuttering for just a moment. But if you've not read year one, it starts off with Gordon arriving into Gotham on a train. He's just moving here, and all he talks about is how much of a cesspit it is, and how much he does not want to raise a kid here. He doesn't want to bring his pregnant wife here. He hates it. He's not happy about it. And he says, "Oh, I bet all the high and mighty like fly into the city." And there's this wonderful duality where we, at the bottom of the page, we get Bruce flying in, complaining that he's in the sky above the city. He wants to be amongst the people on a train. So you have this weird kind of, two sides of the same coin.
Grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah. Bruce is like dodging press. Gordon meets Flash, and Flash is like, "Hey, cops got it made in Gotham," all that stuff. We get introduced to Commissioner Loeb. So much of what we think of as the early part of Batman's career comes from this book. Because in my head I'm like, yeah, Commissioner Loeb. So of course Commissioner Loeb's Commissioner when Batman starts.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible just how much is in this book. And we know this is year one. It's stupidly influential. It's everywhere. But I think you forget just the amount of details that are in it as well that you just take for granted now.
Yeah, Flash, Loeb, like all these things, like Gordon thinking he can try and fit in, but immediately, Flash goes out and beats up some punks for no reason. Says, "Oh, he had this on him," and Gordon's like, "It's a comb. It's a switch comb. It's not a knife." Like, why did you beat him up over it?
There are lots of iconic moments that you remember. Of course, that's from year one, but then there is the smaller things like that you kind of brush over in your memory, I think.
Yeah. And we see Bruce training. We see because again, Bruce doesn't know he wants to be a Batman yet. He wants to fight crime, but he doesn't have a clue about being a Batman yet. But you have Flash getting in the Commissioner's face about, Gordon's not fitting in. He's writing people up for being brutal or taking bribes. He wouldn't accept a bribe himself. He's just not fitting in. And the Commissioner's like, "Look, there's enough heat in me from the mayor and the internal affairs as it is. Wait until I'm out of town in a few weeks before you do it. And, before you rough him up."
I need a good alibi.
Yeah. And sure enough, they show up in mass and beat up Gordon. Wonderful stuff. Silhouettes. The coloring really kind of changes here versus the rest of it.
Everything shifts to these deep reds and oranges and this burgundy, and it just feels dangerous in comparison.
Yeah, and Bruce is like putting on a disguise. He's giving himself a scar so he can walk amongst the thugs and see what's what.
I love that line about a single memorable distracting detail, and it reminded me of the key features of every Bond villain, essentially, as they've all got one thing, and very intentionally so. Like they all have some sort of feature that makes you go, "Oh, that's that Bond villain." Obviously that would have been quite popular at the time. So I wonder if there was something kind of inspired by that.
I think what gets me reading this, especially compared to the issues before, is just the tone. Like there's so much atmosphere.
Yeah.
When Gordon's like getting laid out with a baseball bat and he's lying there and he's like, I recognize that chuckle. It's Flash. Like it feels helpless. It feels like, oh shit, you're surrounded by people you're supposed to be able to confide in.
Yeah, one of my favorite moments there is what you just said. It's not it's flat. It just says Flash, like just the one word. It cuts through so much more. And I think again, we talk about how year one, you kind of forget how influential it is. I think you kind of forget that Frank Miller used to be able to write.
Oh yeah, really well. The only thing I really want to critique is that narration for Bruce is the lettering's a bit too scripty for my liking.
Cursive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's definitely a worse cursor than that, though.
No, there is. I actually didn't struggle too bad with this. I think there was only like one or two words in the entire issue that I kind of had to think about.
It definitely gets to a point where like I refuse to try and figure things out. So unless it's like something that makes a sentence like hard to like understand, I just won't bother trying to figure out a word that I don't get. I'll just keep going and just.
Did you have that in this issue?
A couple, not a lot, but there was definitely a couple here or there.
Fair enough.
Where if the shape of the word overall doesn't just strike me as something obvious.
Yeah.
But yeah, and obviously we get introduced to Selina, who is now a prostitute, and Holly's like this younger prostitute, and Bruce gets into a fight with the pimp.
Yep, as he does.
So yeah, giving you this sort of more again down and dirty. Selina jumps down because it's like he was. I mean, it wasn't actually attacking Holly. Holly just kind of tried to stab him, and he just kind of grabbed her to stop him. to stop her rather, and Selena jumps down, and the police show up, and he has to run, and he gets caught, and the police put him in the back seat, and he essentially has to make them crash to get out. But obviously he saves them. That's one of the key details, is that when we hear about the next day, is that the two policemen were found 30 feet from the car.
Yeah. Do you know, this is one of those moments where, again, I'd kind of forgotten, in the sense that when we got 0 Year, and this is not to shit on 0 Year as much as I know Pete would like to.
Do it.
No. There was a whole thing about how this is not Batman at year one. He's, at year one, he's ready, he's prepared, and it's as much as 0 Year. This is actually a Batman Earth one as well, the Jeff Johns one, where he's making tons of mistakes. He's so green. He's not actually ready to be Batman. And people say year one, he was ready to go. That's it. He was just off. And he was so prepared. And I'm like, in his first encounter out, he got shot and arrested.
Yeah, he does terrible this first night. I love this first night out though. Is the same night that Gordon gets beat up, and then Gordon gets a baseball bat and goes to find Flass and waits for him. I mean, Gordon not only beats him up, but he actually, first of all, there's the fact that he drives past Bruce, because Bruce actually speeds past him. They almost hit each other. There's a nice little, crossing the lanes there. But, he beats up Flass to the point where he strips him down naked in the snow and leaves him there just because he knows that he won't report it. He knows that he won't admit to anyone that Gordon did this to him.
Yeah, one of my favorite narration bits with this, when he was like, he's big, he's got Green Beret training, so obviously you're like, okay, this guy's good. He's like, it's been 15 years since I had to take out a Green Beret. And he's like, oh shit, okay, Gordon can handle himself, more than maybe he had let on so far.
Yeah, but he also gives him a baseball bat. He says he should have a handicap to make this fair. He says that. So what I love about this is the idea that Gordon is already kind of making himself a lesser cop to just survive in Gotham. Obviously he's not giving up his morals, but the fact that he has to come and beat the shit out of him like this just so that he'll stay away from his family is really kind of okay, the city's done this to him already. So later on in the story, when we're well from this yet, but later on when he's willing to maybe accept the idea of a vigilante like Batman to help fix the city, it's what the city's done to him in moments like this that make me believe it. That make me go, no, he's looking for something alternative, because the regular rules just aren't working. He's trying his best to obey them, but it's impossible. He's
understanding that Gotham is broken.
Yeah. And that's when we get to... Well, in the middle of this is a flashback of the Wayne murder, because, of course, it's the Batman origin, there should be, after all. But he's sitting there, and he's basically saying that, Alfred was left to him from his parents, and if he rings this bell, Alfred will come and patch him up, but if he won't, he'll die. And he's basically considering just not ringing the bell, because he doesn't know what to do. He's like, Father, what should I do? What should I do? He doesn't know. And then after the flashback, that famous page, the last page of this first issue, the famous image of the bat crashing through the window. And it's one of those things where up until this point there's been no mention of bats of any kind, and to the point where I was like, does it even mention that this was something that was from his childhood? And he does say this frightened me as a boy. So it's in there. It's just so funny to me though, because I always think of his origin as being so the idea of him being scared as bats as a kid to be something that's really so ingrained in.
Was that something that came from Begins, or was it established kind of before that?
What do you mean?
Batman Begins, the movie obviously established that really core in its opening act, that he was that like this as a kid, and obviously this mentions it here that he was frightened as a boy. But is there a lot more of this? I don't recall in the comic.
I don't know if there's much more. I mean, I think Begins definitely embellished on the idea of the necessity to have a symbol and use a symbol. It's just one of those key factors that have kind of... Because here he says he wants to scare people, but how? How can he scare them? And then the bat comes in and he's like, this frightened me as a boy. Begins definitely took that torch and ran with it a bit more.
Because I think now I feel like I've seen a handful of comics, at least in a post-Batman Begins world, that have kind of really run with that and embellished it and kind of gone, no, we're playing up the childhood trauma of it.
I think that's one of those things where we talk about how Killing Joke or Year One, where technically, I mean, this was in continuity because it was in the main book and it was supposed to be the new origin, but even now when we've reset things a couple of times since, it's still kind of considered the origin of Batman. It kind of feels like, the way we take from this and Killing Joke, I feel like Batman Begins, even though it's a movie, it still had that effect, where there's a couple of things like that that are still like, no, they're now ingrained into Batman as a character, where like the way it added into the importance of the symbol and the importance of how scared he was of the bats as a kid, and why that's so important to him to overcome that, to sort of make it what he uses against criminals. I feel like that is kind of begins, at least to a point, because again, like I say, it existed in some form before then, but the emphasis on it in that movie, I think, has informed a lot of new versions of Batman stories.
That's why I was wondering if it was Begins that kind of ran that, because it's a really nice feedback loop in the sense that the comics kind of, it's definitely established here as a concept in its very basic infancy, but I can't think of anything else between this and Begins that really kind of ran with it in that way.
There's no really other big versions of his origin between this and Begins, so I guess if it did come up, it would have been like some sort of like story where he sort of, it comes with up in present day and he sort of harkens back to it. That might have happened, and we'll find out because we're going to read all of it. But
yeah, exactly.
But nothing springs to mind for me either. But yeah.
But this is such an iconic moment, isn't it? Yes, Father, I shall become a bat. It's ingrained into Batman now. That is the moment.
Yeah. What's funny about this is the one thing that Begins actually played down, is that the moment he sees a bat, it's not this big dramatic moment where he's lying, dying, and because that's the final panel here is him ringing the bell so that Alfred will come save him.
Him choosing to live.
Yeah. Beautiful moment. But Begins, like the moment where the bat comes in, it's just he's just sitting there like, doing some research or whatever. The bat just kind of appears. Obviously, they shift it so the dramatic moment's him facing his fear and standing up amongst the bats, which I love that moment, so I'm not complaining about this, but the actual bat coming in is just like a sort of like, oh, there's a bat in here. Oh. Yeah,
that's more just a, oh, hey, bats. That gives me an idea in that movie. And like you say, it has the big dramatic beat with him facing it, but it's different. Not in a bad way. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
Love that movie.
So that's the issue. It's just so weird to stop there. I'm so used to, like you say, reading
just go into the next bit.
Yeah, it's weird. It's funny because like if you'd asked me like before again what was in each issue of year one, I wouldn't have been able to tell you. I mean, obviously I knew the arriving in the train was at the start because it's obviously the start, but other than that, and the ending's obviously the ending, but everything in between
could kind of happen. Like, I can kind of tell you, well, that's the ending area of the book, but if you tell me it happens in issue 3 and not 4,
that's it. I can tell you one of the cliffhangers actually between issues is when he's trying to escape the building, and it's either just before or after he's called the bats in for help. Because I vividly remember like the SWAT team kind of coming in for him at the start of one of the issues. So I think that's either the end of issue 2 or 3. I don't know which one though. We'll find out.
Fair enough. Like I said, I could not tell you any individual moment that is in a specific issue from here on out.
Yeah. No, I think what's so impressive about year one, reading it especially in this context, having read the few issues before it, is just how much of a shift it is.
It's hard to imagine just how seismic this shift was at the time. Right?
And obviously, Dark Knight Returns was first, so there was like kind of the seed for it that sort of said, hey, maybe Frank Miller should do some sort of new version of the Batman origin, right? There was a seed for it. But we talked about taking things. Now, obviously, a lot of the plot details from Dark Knight Returns has never been taken into mainline continuity. It never should be, because it's such a weird, sort of futuristic, brutal version of Batman. But this idea of having a grittier, more down-to-earth sort of one that we can understand and making it... And obviously very clearly inspired as well by Frank Miller's own Daredevil stories, which predate these Batman stuff. His Daredevil from the end of the 70s into the early 80s, which I've read, actually, is really good. Like, it's fantastic.
Like the first couple of volumes in Comixology, I think. I've never actually touched them.
I never, because there's like his big story from later, like Born Again or whatever it's called. I've never read that, but the actual the first run that he did, I read all of. And I think that was when he introduced Elektra. I think that was her first appearance. I could be wrong, but I think it was.
Yeah, I've definitely got at least a couple of the trades, if not all of them. I just have never read them. Maybe quarantine's the time.
But you can definitely feel it. You can definitely feel reading those stuff that is definitely the same guy who went on to do Batman Year One. And, for whatever reason, maybe just because Batman's the bigger character, but I think Batman Year One is kind of the one that sticks out. Not the biggest story, because Dark Knight Returns is the one that's always brought up first, even though I think Year One's the better of the two. But, I mean, it is what it is. It is what it is. But the tone shift is so good. It feels like the type of Batman you want to be reading, to the point where, do you know what I'm actually really fascinated by? The first issue of Batman after this arc. Like,
is it gonna feel like we're stepping down?
Like, does it try to kind of incorporate some of the new tone with the old stuff, or does it just completely go back to what it was before and like, oh, ew.
It's hard to say because we know not too far from here we get in terms of real world time we're getting to like Nightfall and stuff,
Yeah.
and the build before all of that.
Well, we got death in the families before all that though. So
no, it is, but I'm just going a little bit further out. And when I say a little bit, like it's only a handful of years, right? That we've got to get from what we had before this issue to kind of that as the kind of standard weekly, monthly issue of what to expect.
Yeah, this was like 87, or at least it ended in 87, and Nightfall's like 91, 92.
Yeah, so what? We're looking, 3 to 4 years. Yeah. So it's not that long, really. It might sound like a lot if we tell you how many issues that is, but it's not really that much. And I do wonder how much of a gradual shift it is, or if this kind of does just drag it forward into that age.
And does Detective drag with it, or is it still the goofier comic that we had the last few issues of? Because that was definitely the goofier of the two.
Oh yeah, definitely.
No question. It's going to be really weird, like going to like the next Detective issue, because that's the next episode we'll be doing. Like
it might feel like Whiplash after this.
It might feel crazy after this. So, but no, that's Batman 404. It's such a weird thing to just sort of judge this issue on its own, but I guess that makes for a fun experiment here to actually look at this as a single issue as opposed to whatever. But honestly, it introduces his two main characters, and I love that Gordon is an equal main character in this book. It's a twofer for sure. And I love the ending is dramatic and big. It's very much he's trying, he's failing, and he just gets the idea. Like the important idea comes right at the end. I think it's the perfect cliffhanger. So, I mean, it's hard to fault this issue. There's not a lot. I mean, like I say, some of the lettering maybe in Bruce's narration, maybe half a point take for that. And then.
Yeah, I really didn't want to just be a cliche and rate year one stupidly high because it's year one, but there's a reason it's year one.
I if anything, I think I want to rate it higher because I have the context of reading the issues, also before, but also Detective, like reading those Detective issues and then going to this.
Yeah,
like. It feels so fresh, and it's funny because obviously we're used to like this type of Batman because we've had it for 30 goddamn years, but it feels fresh after reading a few of those goofier issues. It's like, hey, Batman's here, baby.
It's bizarre to think I read a issue of Tynan's Batman more recently than I did that last issue of Detective that we've done for this show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this still feels like a reset of my palette.
Yeah. I think that's just a case of, as comic readers, we're really good at keeping the current comics separate in our mind from old stuff we're reading.
Yeah, there's a lot of separation going on, isn't there?
I think that's just something we're used to. But what are you giving it then? What are you rating it?
I'm going to give it a 9.
Yeah, I guess to be at least a 9. I'm only 9.5. I
thought I was going stupidly high.
I feel like it's the perfect first issue for what this story is. It tells you how desperate this is and how much of a desperate world Gordon's in, and the need for something, even if the ID's not there yet. And then that cliffhanger is perfect.
I'll tell you the only bit I'm really knocking points off for, aside from maybe a couple of words in the lettering,
sure.
And I mean individual words, is the little bit with Selena. I wasn't really feeling. I never really feel that as much.
That's sure. If anything, that's the one thing that maybe kind of hasn't continuously been taken from this is the idea that she used to be a prostitute. I feel like that's something that's just kind of like, nah, we don't really take that part.
Yeah, that's the one bit where I'm like, okay, which is probably why I'm giving it a 9 and not the 9.5. But I mean, it's still a 9.
I actually kind of agree with that. I'm going to go with an 8.5 still because I feel like it's such a.
I mean, I'm not faulting you for giving it a 9.5.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's move on to Wonder Woman issue 6, which happens to be the end of the first trade. If you happen to be reading this in trade form, of course, Connor's reading the omnibus, I think. So he's.
I'm reading it on DC Universe actually.
Oh, you're in DC? Never mind then.
Yes, I'm reading the singles. I mean, same effect essentially. That I don't have trades, but
yeah. So. This I was pretty down in the last issue. I was just actually Bryan Azzarello writing, of course. Tony Akins is on art again,
which is disappointing that we haven't got Chiang back yet. I think he is back for the next issue.
So I have to admit, this is I think my interest level in this book. It's clear that it's kind of dipping as we go because This is the one where the two in a row now I've struggled really hard to remember, and I have to look at it as we're talking to remind myself what the hell happened in it. But the gist of it, from what I recall here, is that Wonder Woman has got Poseidon, and she's got a couple others, basically all on a ploy just to kind of dupe Hera, right?
Yeah, kind of. So she has Poseidon and Hades.
Yes.
Basically, she comes to them. It's like, here's a deal. I'll kind of split Hera with you, and one of you can rule in the day, and one of you can rule in the night, essentially. But her ploy at the same time is to kind of just get Hera out of the table so she won't kill Solar and the baby, and won't be, rage kill the kid. So she's kind of just using everyone to get what she wants, which is very different from what we think of as Wonder Woman, I think.
Do you know, I think part of my issue with this book, and I stopped reading this back at the time, and I think it's kind of coming clear to me why I kind of fell away from it, because I'm kind of losing interest again now, is part of it, because it doesn't necessarily feel have that hopeful, heroic vibe that I get from Wonder Woman. It's kind of like how when I go to Superman, I expect a certain feeling from what Superman should. Not necessarily all the time. You can have a darker Superman story here or there, but typically speaking, there's a general feeling that I feel like Superman should project. And Wonder Woman's kind of a similar thing, where except maybe hope's the wrong word, maybe grace is a better word. And I don't necessarily feel the grace from this Wonder Woman, but I think the other thing that kind of bugs me about this is that I'm not someone who necessarily loves the sort of mythology that Wonder Woman plays with. I like her, and I like a lot of characters in it, and I kind of accept, the mythology of, the gods and all the rest of it. But this is changing all of that, and it's frustrating for me, because I feel so unconfident in what I know about it that I'm not even entirely sure when something's changed sometimes, and I'm like, I don't even know if this is something am I rightfully confused here, or is it just me being forgetful? And it frustrates me.
One point in this issue that I would say is a significant issue, in that I don't know if this is an art or a writing problem. I don't know if it is from the script or if it is just unclear in the art and how it's portrayed. It's when they grab the candle off Hades' head and use it to kind of transport and trap Hera. It's very unclear what's happening as it's happening. I didn't quite get the context until afterwards, and they kind of talk about it of like, oh, this is what we've done. It's very unclear as to what they're actually doing in the moment, and I think that is suffering a little bit, especially as it is the big moment, the crux of the issue.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. That's fair. Diana transports, and then she sort of lures her out to where is it? She lures her out to, but. So she sort of lures her out, and then she comes back, and then it becomes, this was all a ploy. Everything with these gods was just a ploy to get Hera in this position, more than anything else. There is a sort of weird sort of moment here at the end where Zola is sort of lured in by what looks like her mother, but it turns out to actually be
something else.
Something else, yeah, some monster of some kind.
Yeah, we don't know yet, so that's all right.
So yeah, and some of the action is good, like the fighting on the bridge with the centaurs and the Poseidon stuff. I mean, the action looks good. I can't really fault the action, but I have to admit, just from what the story's doing perspective, I find myself kind of apathetic at this point, and I think that's probably why I stopped reading in the first place. Now, I'm not going to say I'm stopping here. We can keep going. It's fine. It's just
it might win you. It might win you back.
It may win me back, yeah. But I think I'm going to try and not just rag on it when we talk about it, because that'll just get old fast. And just point out if there's anything specific that I either like or dislike. So I feel like I've done that. I mean, the art's fine. It's not as good as Chang, obviously, but
yeah, it's clearly trying to emulate Chang's style, and it does a reasonable job of that. I think it does a good job with characters like Lennox in this issue. Like with him with the cigarette, constantly trying to light it off, like Hades' head, because Hades is the melting candle head in this, which I kind of like that design. I think it treats that kind of well. But like I said, I think most of the art is solid. There is just that one, I think it's like 2 pages where I'm like, what exactly is happening here? And it isn't until they explain it afterwards that it becomes clear that it's a real problem. And like I said, I don't know who to blame for that. I don't want to just blame the artist because, Tony Akins is a fill-in artist. I don't want to just blame him on it because, Chang would have covered this, because I don't know that. This may have been unclear in whatever in Azzarello's script. I really don't know. I think it's those 2 pages being the climax of the issue that make this the weakest issue for me so far.
Yeah, that's
And
fair.
that's the big moment of this is the plan all coming together, and I'm like, what just happened?
Yeah, for me, this was kind of just on par with the last issue, which I also wasn't that keen on. It was just kind of, it was had some nice moments of action or whatever, but the actual gist of what it was doing, I wasn't super into. I feel like the conflict with Hera could have been better. Like, because that last issue, they spent like half the issue just sitting around a table talking about it, and I still feel like it didn't do enough to make me understand exactly what was going on. Like,
Okay, I don't quite have that complaint personally, but
yeah, I don't know. But I mean, again, it's one of these things where once you get to the point of apathy, it's sometimes I'm not necessarily taking in details as much as I would otherwise being.
no, that is true. I know that feeling. Not necessarily in this book, but in general.
Yeah, so no, I'll keep giving it a chance. I'll see how issue 7 is, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not super.
I do
feeling
like
it.
how it ends, where the Zola and the baby were stolen, by Hades. I don't know if it was Hades himself because it didn't look like him, but whatever it was for Hades, and Hades, okay, fulfill your bargain that we made with ruling, the heavens, or you'll be the last of Zeus's bloodline, which is a pretty clear threat. Yeah, it doesn't get much clearer.
Yeah, we're giving it.
I am going to give it just a 6.5.
Yeah. I don't know what I gave the last one. I think it was about a 5. I'll give it a 5 again. 5 out of 10. No, not a train wreck by any means, but it's just not really appealing to me all that much. So that takes us on to The Flash, issue 65. Mark Waid writing with Greg LaRocque on the art. This is the final issue of the Born to Run arc. Something that when I was talking about this an issue or two ago, I remember, I think I said, oh, I'm sure Barry tells him who he is by the end of the arc. He doesn't. That was a made-up memory.
I don't know if I'm going to blame you for that or the issue, but I'm going to knock off at least half a point to what I did originally in that, as we were talking about at the start of this episode, that I didn't realize this was the last issue. Even as I was reading it and it said end, I just assumed it meant end of the issue because it didn't really feel like the end of the story for me.
No, I got in the story to a point. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's definitely stuff to still explore from his early days if Wade's going to go back and do that, and he might. I don't know if he does, but he might. But, I mean, just in the sense that he kind of learns to not, like, hate being with his parents. Like, there's kind
of...
what
I think it is that's throwing me off is, now that I'm thinking about it in that context, this issue feels more like an epilogue. Whereas, as I was reading it, I thought this was the transition reissue between the two parts of the story. So that's kind of what's thrown me off, I think.
Yeah. So yeah, we have Wally's in present day. He's with his grandfather, and just to remind us again of the framing device. But it shows us Iris driving Wally home, and Wally being kind of pissy about it, ignoring the tornado warning on the radio as well. Iris tried to talk him into caring about his parents, and he's just kind of pissed. And we know that it's not just because he's going home. We know it's because he also has been told that he can't use his powers, which is really upset him. And when his father comes home, he drops a dish, and his father just yells at him. He doesn't even say hi to him without being prompted. He's like,
and he's so frustrated because he's like, yesterday I could have caught that dish, and now, I could have. What was the exact line he says? He says something specific. I could pass a Concorde like it was standing still, and now I couldn't even catch a stupid plate.
Yeah, I like the touch that he's got like Flash like bedspreads and like Flash posters and whatever.
He's a proper fanboy.
He's a proper fanboy. It is a bit weird that he's got a photo of his aunt on his like nightstand. I mean, I get what it's doing, but that's just so weird. Like, I don't think any kid has a photo of their aunt on the nightstand. That's kind of weird. I don't think most kids have a photo of anyone on their nightstand. I mean, maybe if their parents give them a photo and say, hey, put that in your nightstand, maybe they'll have like a family photo or something, but it's not something kids tend to have.
No, not at all.
Not of a person they know. Maybe of like a celebrity or something they've got a crush on. Like, I could buy that.
That's much more likely.
Yeah, like, I don't know.
I would expect far more likely for it to be some cutout from a magazine of some celebrity or other than your aunt.
I mean, what time period are we in here? Who would Wally be into? Like Cyndi Lauper? I don't know. Who was a hit?
Right.
Yeah, who was a hit with the young teenage boys, or not even teenage? He's 10, but like,
yeah.
Anyway, so he's really upset. and he's so pissed that he actually runs out. He goes out the window. His dad comes up to find him. He's not there. And can I just say how much I love the art shift here? Because everything's really flat and like all these flat pale blue walls and stuff like that. And then when you go outside and it's the storm, it's just all this scratchy and shadow. It looks so different and distinct.
It's so scratchy is the word I want to use.
Oh, it's great. And we've imprisoned art a lot in this arc. I think every issue's had like that standout moment of a really good bit of like timing and sequencing and the pacing in the panels. And there's one coming up here later actually, during all this stuff. But his dad actually finds him and climbs up the tree, and he even mentions how he didn't even realize his dad could climb a tree. But his dad's really like, and even the way dad's phrases things, he's like, "Oh, you come down here this instant. I don't want to have to take you to the hospital." Like the way he phrases, like, "No, I don't want you to be an inconvenience. So come down this instant."
Yeah, like, I don't need you breaking a leg. Like, no, I don't want you to break a leg.
Yes. So, but it's basically this. Wally learned to understand that his dad does care about him. It's just in his own unique way. Because one of the things Iris says earlier is that oh yeah, your dad and my dad wasn't his father wasn't that great a relationship. He didn't really like him that much. So it's kind of this almost running the family thing where, theoretically Wally might be a shitty dad one day, although we know he's not because we have hindsight.
I suspect it's one of those things that skips generations in the sense that because they had a shitty dad, they intentionally got out of the way not to be a shitty dad.
Well, it didn't in this case, though, did it?
Well, no, but generally speaking.
Because Wally's dad and the grandfather.
No, I know. I mean, generally. Yeah. Not always.
So, lightning strikes the tree, and Wally's okay, but the trunk lands on his father, and Wally can't pick it up. And there's a tornado coming. And so we straight up get like... And Joe, what I love about this is I'd forgotten that this kind of ends with the big action climax of this series isn't with the Flash. It's Wally on his own, in his own town, dealing with something completely. And he's like, hey, I saw the Flash once, unfunnel a tornado, basically, by running around it.
It's not even stopping like a crime or... It's not even like a weather wizard tornado or anything. It's just a tornado.
No, I love that. I love that it is just a natural disaster. But plus it gives it the setting as well, because it's the Midwest, it's tornado country.
That's it. I don't say just a tornado as if tornadoes aren't potentially dangerous. I mean, in comparison to Flash villains.
Yeah, and it's this thing here where Wally basically makes that hero's choice. He's like, you know what? I don't care if this kills me. I have to try and save my dad. I have to try and stop this. So he puts on the outfit. His dad's knocked out, obviously, so he doesn't see any of this. And I will say that the panel of him in full costume when he's first put it on, the
little bit
posture's a bit weird, yeah. However, the page after that may be my favourite page of art in the book, because it's the pacing again, where he's trying to run and he falls down. And I think because of the scratchy art, the rain, and the really selling the mud that as he lands in it, you really feel that he's being beat down by the weather.
Yeah, I kind of love how the rain and this puddle, it's inky black, right? It's not like even rain on a heavy overcast day when it's a storm doesn't look black like this. This does feel like ink, and I know you're going, well, that's because it is ink, but I mean the effect of it is really, really strong.
But he gets back up, of course, and he does it anyway, and he kind of fights through it. And fights through the pain that it's been caused because he's supposed to hurt because of this. And it's almost like he's just training his muscles. Like, if you want an explanation as to why he's fine after this, it's like no, he basically just conditioned his body to be okay with it.
Yeah, all of this is talks about he hits the wall and he breaks through it, and it's athletes when they break through the wall they can keep going, and now he can too. And
for me, it doesn't feel like it betrays what his grandfather told him last issue, because his grandfather is working purely theoretical here. He's had one patient before him who's got super speed, and that's the Flash. And this is the first kid that he's had with super speed. Like, everything he's saying is completely hypothetical. He doesn't have precedence. He doesn't know what he's really doing.
He's making an educated guess, and it's not a bad guess based on what the information he had.
Yeah, but Wally has to try to save his father, so he pushes through it anyway. And he's got blood coming from his nose, but he does it. And I love how the art goes back to what you recognize as the art in this book. Like the black scratchiness goes away after the tornado dissipates, and it's back to the old coloring. And he gets his dad up off the table, and we cut back to present day. And Wally's talking to his grandfather, and his grandfather's like, don't worry, Iris knew what you did, and one day when she found out, and all the rest of it. So, and Wally kind of, at first he's going to try to leave, and he's like, you know what, no, I will stay for dinner. And his grandfather's like, "Hey, Iris lives on in you." Like, what it says? What Barry taught me how to be the Flash, taught me how to be Kid Flash, but Iris taught me how to be Wally West.
Yeah.
So it ends in a close up of a photo of the two of them. And yeah, so he's staying for dinner, and he's accepted he's passed, and that is the end of the issue. 65 and the end of the arc. We finished our first arc.
Go us.
And the Waid's Flash. Really good stuff, and I think what's so good about it is that this came after Batman Year One, but obviously the tone is completely different because it should be for a couple of reasons. One, first of all, it's not Batman, but secondly, the main character's 10 years old, so it should be more jovial. It should be more lighthearted, and I think my favorite thing about the arc is how Waid writes young Wally to have kind of a kid's attitude about things. The way he throws like tantrums in his head about hating Barry and being bored, it feels like, okay, you're being a little shit, but you're being a sort of a relatable kid,
a normal little shit, not someone who belongs in juvie.
Yeah, not like a Damien who's like trying to kill people.
Yeah,
not like that. So I really appreciate that. I think the voice is really well done, and yeah, and I do wonder how much of this stuff that we're talking about, do we get to see maybe like a reinterpretation of when Iris finds out, when Barry tells him who he is? Like, do we get to see like how he gets his yellow costume and like other flashbacks later? I don't know if we do. Maybe we do. Maybe we don't.
Maybe. I will say, as much as I agree with everything you've just said about like 10-year-old Wally. I'm kind of looking forward to just getting into adult Wally.
Well,
just,
I
know it's coming, but I'm kind of just I'm ready for that now.
Yeah. But that's Born to Run, Flash Year One. I thought this issue comes up to the standard of the previous. It's kind of interesting that outside of Barry kind of waving goodbye at the start, there's no Barry after that, no Flash. It is just Wally's story on his own. So the torch, in a way, not fully, but in a way, has been kind of passed on as the main character of the book. Where, I mean, it was always the main character, but he gets to have an issue to himself, where it's really just him and no Flash.
It does feel like transitionary in that sense, that it's like, okay, we're done with Barry now, again.
And even Iris, who's there for a bit longer, says goodbye, and she leaves, and this is just Wally and his problems now.
Yeah.
So, really good stuff. What are you giving Flash 65?
I'm going to give it a solid 7.
Yeah, I'm going to go as point high. I'm going to go 8. I like I say, we mentioned that one weird, body, panel, but
yeah,
like the art's really good, especially the way it transitions when it goes into the storm. I really like, and again, the pacing that the art has had and the layouts has been so good, and it's consistent in this one too. So that is Flash issue 65, which will take us on to Birds of Prey Manhunt issue 4, the conclusion to this 4-issue miniseries here. By Chuck Dixon and Matt Haley on the art. So this is Catwoman and Huntress coming to the city, the plastic, or the no plastic city, I should say, the plastic-less, plastic-less city, and obviously Oracle trying to help where she can over the comms. Interesting idea here that what's his name here, Brawn, is actually a metahuman and has an ability where he can kind of predict all the moves you're about to make, because he hears kind of your thoughts, but only like the thoughts are about what you're about to do, from the sounds of it.
Yeah, and I think that is actually the crux of my biggest problem with this issue, is that it sets that up very early on and makes it very clear what it's doing, and then spends a good third half of the issue maybe kind of going, oh, well, what could it be that he can do? And I'm like, it's just there. And I feel like it takes so long to get to it that it's frustrating.
I think it's actually kind of weird that there was no hints for this in the previous issues. I don't remember any either.
I don't recall.
Maybe there wasn't some of the action scenes where you can go back and then go, oh, I guess he was using that ability. Maybe that makes more sense now. But yeah, Shiva wants a piece of Black Canary because she recognizes her.
Yeah. I really liked how it established his ability early on.
Because he blocks Shiva.
Yeah, Shiva takes a swing and he just steps in and grabs her arm like it's nothing.
And it's one of those things where at first I'm like, wait, are they trying to sell me that he's a better fighter than Shiva? That's a bit far-fetched just to set up this asshole villain. But I like that almost immediately either Oracle or Canary say, wait a minute, Shiva's like the best fighter on the planet, one of the best fighters on the planet. This isn't right. How is he able to do that?
Yeah, I think that's my problem. Where we're still at here is that's, I don't know, early few pages, and then the very next page after he stops her, which it sells you as a threat because you go, okay, so he can stop Shiva, so he can probably stop any of the other fighters there as well. But the very next page, Babs is going, metahuman ability. And I'm like, okay, I'm starting to get it already. And it feels like it's so long in the issue then until the rest of the characters get there.
There's obviously some journeying with the other characters. Canary, I don't like how Canary tries to get a hit in because she kind of like I just have to sort of not think about what I'm doing. Because later on, like that's how they do it. Is Oracle tells her what to do rather than actually her fighting herself. I like this running gag of Babs like doing random things as she's talking to them. Like she's like just out the shower at one point and she's like blow drying her hair as she's like talking to Catelyn.
It's this dichotomy of her being at home, kind of or kind of at home doing this relatively normal stuff, and the rest of them being out in danger.
It's been a running thing because she was like exercising or swimming in one of the other issues when she was talking to them. It's been kind of a running gag throughout. But of course they get there and very quickly it becomes this giant fight where Shiva's involved fighting I think Catwoman, and Huntress is obviously in there. And he doesn't even remember who Huntress is, which really, of course, but pisses her off, as you'd expect.
Yep, pretty fairly.
So, so the fight happens, but she does kick him in, or knee him in the nuts, though. And then this was the moment I was talking about where she sort of lets Babs kind of like tell her what to do rather than think about it herself. I like the idea that if he's not really paying attention, you can still surprise him. If you like sneak up behind him and just give him a whack, like you wouldn't be able to predict that because he's not really like listening for it.
Yeah, it's something that, in retrospect, bothers me a little about what happened with Shiva. In that, this is here, she's just saying, like Jabberwock, just think random things and kind of act on muscle memory to a point almost. And I'm like, wait, you're telling me Shiva thought about what she was gonna do, as opposed to just do it? Shiva of all people.
I mean, that's fair. I can't really fault that. Yeah, they are as solid as it's been. Bit cartoony.
Yeah, but there's no standout panels, good or bad. I think it's just really solid throughout. I do like the last page a lot though. Like with them riding away on the horses, I think that looks kind of great. Yeah,
they're riding away from the city as it's burning, and they're on horses because that was the only option they had, and that's the end of the story. Yeah. They beat win the fight. Shiva kind of smirks and vanishes into the flames because she's like, okay, well, that was actually a pretty decent fight. I'll see more of you guys later. Basically,
that panel was pretty solid actually. Her in the flame.
Yeah, honestly, it's one of these weird things where I think as a miniseries on its own, it feels like it's just okay. It's not like there's some fun beats here or there. It's kind of like important by the context of being kind of the first proper Birds of Prey arc, but it's not actually obviously a standout story for them. I don't think.
Yeah, it's a fine story overall, and I think if it was just a random mini, you'd probably overlook it. In context of it clearly being a building block of this prototype of the Birds of Prey, as kind of like, well, we're kind of figuring it out, and we're almost there.
Yeah, if you're reading the thick trades for this, after this there's another couple of one shots. And then the actual ongoing series starts with the start of the second trade. So
you have to tell what those one shots are.
I am going to have to tell you because it's not entirely obvious. But no, I mean I think it's an enjoyable enough read. But I think the best thing we've read from Birds of Prey so far was that first big one shot, that long oversized issue where Canary was just investigating that corrupt
that had a
Greenpeace guy
for it, and it hit a lot harder than we expected as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That said, though, I think the building of her relationship, like Babs and Dinah's relationship, is really sort of still been seeded throughout all these, and I like that that's still going.
It feels like a continuity thread in the sense that by the time we get to the Birds of Prey proper series, it feels like this is kind of they built this up over time. It's not out of nowhere, their relationship.
Yeah. So there you go. That is Birds of Prey Manhunt issue 4. What are you giving it?
I will give it I'll give it the 7, just about.
Yeah, I'll give it a 7. I agree with that score. So that'll take us on to JSA issue 5. Jamie Robinson and David Goyer writing. I think it's probably the last issue writing, without John's at least. And then we have Derec Aucoin. I'm going to say that is, or I mean, it could be Aucoin, but I feel like it's a foreign name, so I'm going to assume it's not just that.
See, the reason why I assumed it might have been is I don't know. The credits is just the surname, so I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. It felt like it could have been a mononym.
Okay. Okay. Well, regardless, this is an issue obviously picked up with the cliffhanger where sand kind of fell through the earth, and we start with that happening where he's kind of falling through parts of the crust. We actually, I didn't even noticed this until I just looked just now, but it was like a dinosaur skeleton, like he's went past. I thought that's a nice little touch. But he eventually kind of like climbs back up to a surface wherever he is on Earth, and he ends up in like a beach. I actually love that panel of like him coming out of the sand and the beach, and this like woman in her bikini just like going ah.
I really like his face and the struggle that he's going through.
Mm-hmm.
I think her reaction doesn't quite work for me.
I wasn't even meaning the art. I was just meaning the what's happening. The actual the happening of it is what I enjoy. I mean, yeah, but the art on him's better than her for sure. But he's at Tyler Co. getting checked up, which has the granddaughter, the great granddaughter of Rex Tyler. So she has a kind of a moment meeting the new Hour Man with the memories.
It's a grandniece.
Grandniece, sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the relation's right. I mean, he explains that basically he's changed from being carbon based to being silicon based, and it's probably because of this thing that happened to him when he's passed me was a sidekick with a gun, where he did go through this rough patch, but they thought they'd fixed it. They thought they'd cured it, but it's kind of came back in a weird new way. That said, though, as we see throughout the issue, it does lend him to some new powers where he can now kind of like travel through different types of material. Anything that's got silicon in it, he can travel through now.
Yeah, it kind of presents as the way the Flash phases through things.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Mr. Terrific shows up, kind of the first time we see him. Michael specifically, that's Mr. Terrific.
Yeah, I think that's important in the sense that, okay, it's another legacy character, which is obviously the key focus of this book right now.
Oh yeah, because when he's talking to Sand, he's like, "Oh, it's nice to meet someone who fought alongside my namesake, the original Mr. Terrific." So no, it's nice to have those beats. And it's funny because when he leaves, maybe you should come by the GSA headquarters sometime and maybe hang out. And he's like, "Yeah, maybe I will." So it's kind of even hinting there that he's probably going to join the team later. Mm. He's probably going to be around. John Stewart, who's not an active Green Lantern anymore, is the architect for the renovation of the GSA headquarters. And
I liked his company name, Shining Light Architects.
Nice touch. I have to admit, I did not remember that John Stewart was in a wheelchair at one point.
I did, but only because of this issue.
Only because of this issue, okay.
Yeah.
So, cool. So he's talking to Sand about the what's going on with the building. Sand kind of freaks out. He has these pains. He's like, no, I need to just kind of go. And again, he sinks into the floor and leaves his clothes behind. He's like, I need to get some clothes that will go with me. I can't keep being naked.
He needs the Hulk stretchy pants equivalent.
Do you know what's funny? I don't know if it was the first time I read this book. No, it must have been the second time I read this first trade. But the villain that he runs into here, was it Geomancer?
Yeah.
He'd just been on The Flash. So I remember reading this issue soon after that episode and being like, oh shit, that shitty villain that was just on The Flash, he's here.
Was he on The Flash?
Yeah, he was in an episode of The Flash.
See, when you said he was in The Flash, I assumed you meant like some random issue that you'd read at the time.
No. He was on a TV show.
Not the TV show. I don't recall that at all, but I will take your word for it.
Yeah. And Sand obviously has to stop him from causing chaos. Knocks him out. Does whatever. This is a fun little action sequence. That's what it is. He's kind of in sand mode the whole time, so he looks kind of like sandy. Coloured.
Yeah, I think that's... I think he looks a little bit too green. He looks a little hulky.
Yeah, I agree with that. Should be a bit more yellowish.
Yeah.
Or brownish. Or maybe orange. You know what I mean? Like sandy coloured.
Yeah, yellowy, browny, orange. In that range, I think is closer than the green that we're seeing here.
Yeah, I think what would be good if there was a method they could use to give it kind of a sort of a texture, to give it the kind of the sandy quality. I don't know if you do that with like sort of colouring it with a different technique, like maybe using a sponge to colour them instead of with the pen or whatever.
Yeah, kind of give it the really fine spots.
Yeah.
That
may be a tactic that they could use for a character like that. He actually ends up falling to the ground again, though. And there's a great panel here of his hand. It's the opposite. You know how the hand coming out the grave that you get in a lot of horror movies? It's the opposite of that, where it's going down and the sun's behind it.
Yeah, it looks great, doesn't it?
Yeah, very nice moment. But he actually does this as a ruse and comes back up and grabs Geomancer from the other side. So There you go. That's how he wins that fight and knocks him out. So we see him. He's got his new outfit that will travel with him. He still wants to be called Sand, even though the others. But was it? Geomancer said he was working for, was it the council? So Alan's going to look into see if he can figure out who the council are. Is this anyone we know? Is this some group of villains we have to be aware of? Sand demonstrates he's sort of control that he's getting over his powers. He scares one of the workers, drops his screwdriver.
To be fair, if someone just popped out of a wall in front of me, I might be a little bit worried too.
Yeah. So this is a Sand-focused issue. This is a nice sort of like giving him the first issue we had definitely gave him more than the others, but now that he's the leader of the team, and obviously we know we're getting other issues as well, focusing on different characters. It's nice to start with him, but this is kind of his issue to really establish what his power set is and give us a feel for the character, which I think is important in a team like this, especially when a lot of the characters are characters who have not had their own books in decades, if ever. So it makes a lot of sense to do it. And then the final little tease is actually a tease of Obsidian.
Yeah, where he takes out this guy, and it's pretty sinister. And then he comes out and he's talking to him, like, "Hey, I didn't even need to
One
go
of
all
his
Obsidian to deal with him. It was easy."
Yeah, one of his foster fathers or foster parents that he's killing here, and obviously we teased Obsidian back in like the first issue because there was like one of the scenes that cut away from the funeral, if you remember. So really cool stuff. I love how the colouring completely changes for these 2 pages versus the rest of the issue. Like these blues that it's got.
It's really dark blue, a lot of shadow, which obviously makes sense.
Yeah, very different from everything we've had before. And that's the end of the issue. That's the end of that. So the next issue is actually, I believe, the first John's issue.
It's John's still with Goyer though.
Still with Goyer, but yeah, first John's issue. So that's exciting. We're finally getting to a John's issue.
So the John slot might finally have Johns in it.
Yeah, finally got some Johns. What a novelty. No, it's a solid issue. I mean, it's not my favourite so far of the
I think
of the run.
In many ways it might be my least favourite so far. Even though there's nothing really wrong with it. It's just not that exciting in its own right. It's a really solid. Okay, this is establishing Sand. He's going to be the leader, so we've got to do this first.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not that exciting either.
Yeah, this is a solid 7 if I ever read one.
Yeah, I would agree with that in every way.
Yeah, it's a solid 7. Not too much to complain about. Nothing too much to overly praise. It's just a solid continuation, doing some proper character building that it needs to do, so we understand Sand and who he is and so on. And a couple of teases for things coming up, of course, as well. So. Yeah. Really cool stuff. That is JSA issue 5, which will take us on to Action Comics issue 769. Joe Kelly writing with Kano on the art. Nice to know that the fighter from Mortal Kombat also gets some work as a comic artist.
Hey, you got to make ends meet. All about the graft.
So this has been a real mixed bag. Obviously, this has been an arc that's been bouncing around all the Superman books. This is the first Action issue. This completes the rotation of the 4 books before we get the one shot, and then we get another rotation of the 4 books. This is the issue that at least has a bit of Superboy in it, or Super Burger Boy, as we come to know him above.
Yeah.
But it's kind of this weird thing where that first issue was really good, and then we had a really bad issue, and then the last one was just kind of mediocre and in the middle.
Yeah.
This, I think, is again mediocre, maybe a touch better, but still kind of on that mediocre borderline.
I agree. Before we even get to anything else, though, I want to complain about the credits page.
Okay.
So on the credits page, if you would care to take a look at it, it's like the second page in it.
Okay, I'm getting there. There we go.
It has along the left-hand side the title of the arc, Superman Arkham.
Mm-hmm.
And underneath it, it says, and this is all like upside down lettering because Bizarro, but it says Part 2. And that threw me. I came back out of the issue and was like, was I supposed to read this as Part 2? And then I was like, nope, it says Part 4 in the solicit text underneath it, essentially. I checked in a reading order and it said Part 4.
Interesting tidbit here. In the trade, it says Part 4.
Oh, that is interesting.
They fixed it. That was clearly a mistake. That was a print error.
Okay, it was a print error. But I'm just looking at this and going, Part 2, should I have been reading this second? I'm like, it doesn't make any sense. Second. When I got through the rest of the issues, it was very clear.
Because you said that, and I looked at it and went, that says 4. What's he talking about?
No, okay. In the single issue, originally, which is what I'm assuming this DC Universe version is, definitely says Part 2, because I'm looking at it now just to make sure I wasn't going crazy.
Can I just... I really wish I don't really like the gimmick of doing the creators' names backwards for the Bizarro speak. But if you're going to do it, can you at least like they've done this thing with Joe Kelly's name, where because Joe's 3 letters, the first word is 3 letters. So rather than have Kelly be one word backwards, it's like Joe K is one word, and then LLY is the second word or the first word. Depending on your perspective.
It's like
I hate it.
You'll
like at least have it be Joe backwards and then Kelly backwards. Like don't redistribute the amount of letters. It's annoying.
I'm with you on that.
To the point when I looked up the creator for my list here so I could say it, I actually was like, oh, is Joe Kelly wrote this? Because I tried to read it and went, I can't be bothered. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, if you'd seen Joe Kelly, you'd have gone, oh, I know who that is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and Kano, and I thought Onak was the artist, but it's actually Kano.
What a bizarre world.
That's kind of the point. Basically, Superboy is working at a burger place and hates his life. And then Bizarro and the fight with the GSA, or the GLA, sorry, sort of come crashing through. He then is like, great, I can give up this job because the building's screwed. But much like Superman, he's living in a loop and the building just kind of reappears and he's forced to go back to work and he's just miserable about it. And that's your Superboy inclusion.
That's pretty much all of Superboy, right?
Yeah, that's it. The rest of it's Superman and Steel going to the Watchtower, and basically Superman finding Mixie, the real Mixie, and Mixie gives him his memories back so he knows who he is and like grabs him. And there's a lot of self-doubt before then where he makes like little glasses for himself and he's confused because everyone here knows that 2 + 2 = fish except us.
Yeah, I actually quite like the moment where he kind of bent the glasses into the shape of the frames. I did like that.
I will say, I did think it was kind of weird. There's a whole page like teasing the villain that he's going to fight on the Watchtower when we met him already before. It was like, oh, the big villain that Superman's going to have to fight, and it was like, I don't know, it didn't feel that important to me to give him a whole page of like, hey,
did we meet him before?
Yeah, he was in the lineup because it was like Ignition or whatever his name is, right?
I'll take your word for it.
Igniter.
Because that was 2 issues ago, and it was a pretty uninspired lineup.
Yeah,
but I will take your word for it that he was there.
And there's a page of Lois just sort of being confused as why she keeps doing things to help Superman.
Kind of the same we've had for the last 3 issues.
Yeah, that's my biggest problem, is that I feel like this issue and the last 2, or last 3, what's it been? Last 2. Yeah, this is the 4th issue overall, so it's the last 2.
So the last 2 plus this one.
Is that I feel like they didn't have enough story for 3 issues, so there's been so much fluff and repetition in these 3 issues. Now this one's probably the best written of the 3 because it's Joe Kelly, but I still found myself being frustrated because I feel like it was doing nothing new.
I feel like there's this obligatory inclusion of the characters who were meant to be in the books, like in this case Superboy, and we had the Supergirl in that other issue where it's like and they've got to be in the issue. Steel has felt like actually relevant.
Yeah. I honestly, like, the only important thing in this issue is the ending, which is he gets to Mixie, he gets his memories back, and we find out who's actually pulled it. Because obviously Superman thinks Mixie's behind all this world, and Mixie's like, no, it's not me. Someone else is like manipulating to their heart's content, and it's the reveal that it's Joker, right? Emperor Joker is the guy behind this.
I like the beat where Superman starts choking Mixie. It's like, you're gonna say your name backwards, damn it, and Mixie just says it, and he's like, but that was easy. I didn't have to trick you to it. And he's like, yep. And see, nothing happened.
Yeah.
That was kind of nice.
Yeah. They also encounter, Gorgeous Gilly?
Yes.
Which is just a sort of gross out comedy spot where she tries to kiss Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't that exciting.
Yeah. So, I do love the idea that, like, Mixie, like, what we think of as Mixie now from the modern era, like when he astral projects, he sends it like the classic 50s Mixie.
Yeah.
The
I don't know how long this era, this idea of Mixie's been going on, but I think it's clearly, if this isn't the first place, I'm not going to give this credit.
Oh, sure.
But, the idea that he's not evil, he's trickster and just kind of going along with things, and for him here, it's like, no, this is too far. Like, I'm not messing with this. This is Joker. Come on, Superman, you got to come and sort this shit out. Yeah.
So, Maxipellic's not the one behind it all. It is Joker, and that's your big cliffhanger leading into the one shot. So clearly, the only real plot beats that had to happen in the 3 issues after the first proper issue that was by Loeb is that Superman needs to get his memories back, Maybe he has to introduce me with some of what other characters are, if that's important
I
for
would
later.
say Recruit Steel, maybe.
Yeah.
Again, that's the only one that feels important right now.
And have the reveal at the end that Joker's behind it. That is the only important stuff that's happened in the 3 issues. Everything with Bizarro has been fluff. Everything, mostly with Supergirl and Superboy, outside of maybe just establishing where they are, because that might become relevant when they show up.
Yeah, but it feels like this could have been 1 issue instead of 3. Very easily.
Absolutely could have been. It's been a frustrating read because of that. So, yeah, I mean, I do think this is the best of the 3. After that first good issue, this is the best of the 3, but unfortunately, I still think it's only maybe just scraping like a 6.
That's exactly where I'm going to put it, a 6 as well. Like I say, I think it's probably the best. It feels the most relevant because it kind of feels like we're going right into the final beat. It definitely wasn't a chore to read like the second issue of this arc was. So I think it's kind of gotten gradually better over the last 3 issues to this point. But I mean, we're nowhere near the heights of that first issue, which was really quite solid.
Yeah, it's a shame. All right, well, we'll move on then to our final issue of the show, which is Batgirl issue 2. This is, of course, the 2009 series that came out of Batman Reborn, and not only was Dick Grayson taking over Batman, Stephanie Brown was taking over Batgirl, and we obviously talked about the first issue, praised it pretty heavily, and issue 2 comes here. We had the cliffhanger, of course, was Babs showing up to confront Stephanie about being Batgirl, kind of. What's so great about it is the hypocrisy, because Babs kind of started that way too. She kind of did it without it being sanctioned. She just went out and did it.
Yeah, and that was kind of the whole point, that she could have proved herself.
So,
we should definitely do Batgirl Year 1 at some point.
I love Batgirl Year 1. That is such a on the vote book.
That is going to be on a vote at some point, yeah.
So we have Steph, taking these, carjackers or whatever they are. I can't even remember. They're at a mechanic's place, but
and she's like, "God damn it! I should have learned how to sew."
Yeah, but Babs is trying to talk her out of it, and she's, Steph's just like munching her waffles as you do, because she's the waffle queen, of course. And I love that she runs away from Babs bigging up her stairs. It's such a. She doesn't even say anything about it. She doesn't like crack a joke about her being in a wheelchair. She just walks up the stairs to get away from her.
Yeah,
it's just.
And her house is obviously not built to accommodate.
Yeah, it's just a statement. And what does Babs do? She throws a batarang at her.
That'll do the trick.
Yeah. And she's like, I can handle myself. And Babs is like, yeah, we'll see. So we have, Steph in class, basically, again, not really pay attention, but she does actually crack a little joke based on the lesson, which makes some of the other people in class laugh. And she's like, hey, this is a bit better than high school. People aren't just lame for the sake of it, until the douchebag tries to kind of ask her out in a really sort of, frat boy kind of way. And she's like, nah, but actually it's still a little bit like high school. Still...
Yeah, and the popular girl, kind of, quote unquote, just kind of laughs at her a bit.
Yeah. And Babs is looking into the recent death of the I think one of the race car drivers. He was on a drug. This is where it's going, where there's this designer drug that's making people go kind of crazy. It's kind of exotic, and of course there's this harvest festival. And I love the running gag here where Stephanie and then later Babs is like, "What does Gotham even harvest? There's no harvesting going on."
Yeah.
But the popular girl basically acts out because she's taking some of this drug. Someone spiked the drink. The punch at this festival, and Steph sees the guy run off. She's like, okay, I'm getting my batsuit out, and she runs off. But of course, much like Babs warned her earlier, eventually she was going, because do you know what I loved about this? This is going to be a bizarre comparison, but it reminded me a little bit of Jurassic Park 3.
Defend.
Stick with me. So in Jurassic Park 3, the kid that was left on the island that they're there to find, when Alan Grant finds him, he's got a jar of T-Rex piss, and the reason why he has it is because it scares away the smaller dinosaurs, but the bigger dinosaur, the Spinosaurus, it attracts. So it's a really useful tool, but it's dangerous against the one thing that's bigger and badder. So that's kind of what Babs says here, but the bat symbol is that it scares away the low-level thugs, but for the crazier villains, it'll attract them.
How is it that Jurassic Park 3, of all things, has a better jar of piss usage than Batman v Superman?
I can't believe it, but my comparison there, I think, was basically perfect.
I mean, I want to give you shit, but you might be onto something.
The bat symbol is the jar of T-Rex piss in this context. And of course, so this guy
Yes.
doesn't run. He pulls out a knife. He's got his thugs to sort of back him up. And Bab starts talking to her, and she's like, "Wait, how can you talk to me?" She's like, "Look, this was Cassie's suit. Of course, there's some comms in there because I'm Oracle. What are you talking about?"
Yeah, she's like, you did wash the suit, right? And she's like, sure.
Steph. And she has to dodge the truck and all the rest of it. And Babs is just kind of like rubbing her eyes, like, "Oh God, all right." And also our servers are starting to smoke. She's new computers.
Yeah.
It's all very amusing. And she calls in Alfred, and Alfred's like with the outsiders.
He's flying a shuttle in space.
Yeah. And she's like, "Hey, is the key still hidden where it was supposed to be?"
Still under the mat, and he's like, "I think we moved it to a hollow rock in the garden, so try there instead."
So it cuts to the Batcave, and Babs has got Steph in the Batcave, and they're analysing the crime, the hologram of the crime scene, and looking at what's going on. And Steph's insisting that she's going to do this. Nice little bit here where she's like, "Hey, like the original Batgirl outfit's in one of these cases," and I like how there's actually a mention about how they're changing it. Dick's actually moving things around to suit him because it's his Batcave now. Because there's a little joke about, "Oh, I wonder what he's going to do with a penny." But
yeah, there's a nice bit of how Steph shouldn't aspire to have a costume there because that usually doesn't mean something good.
Yeah. Oh, to be fair with Dick, he moved on to a better thing.
Yeah, but he's the exception.
Yeah, everyone else is because they either died or get paralyzed or
shit happened.
Yeah, whatever. So yeah, I love Babs throwing it at her face, and she even acknowledges in her narration. She throws it at her face when she says, "Oh, the cop said someone was pretending to be Batgirl." That's how she was referred to on official channels.
And then she's like, "No, I'm being spiteful now," and she, even though it's probably true that the cop said that.
Yeah, and she admits that she might even be jealous. Like that might be it. She might want to be this herself. And then she throws it in her face where she's like, "If you don't do what I tell you, I'll tell your mother."
Yeah.
So really good stuff. The guy that the cops picked up though, there was the main one she was fighting. Like basically, there's like a breakout attempt when he's in the car where the manhole kind of shoots up at them. There's a whole attack to try and break him free. And the big reveal at the end of the issue, the big cliffhanger, is that Scarecrow is behind this drug, and that's why it's making people go so crazy.
Because
it's
of course.
Fear toxin. So yeah, Scarecrow is a solid B-level villain to give like a sidekick, a Batgirl level character, kind of a big villain to fight in the first arc, but not like it's not the Joker, but Scarecrow, he's big enough that he's a name.
I agree. He's a name where he's big enough that okay, sure, he can fight Batman and take him on in a story, but he's not so big that you don't doubt that one of the sidekicks could take him out on his own.
Yeah,
on their own. In this, just like they can have a good shot at it.
Yeah, not to say. I mean, I think there's a great potential in like Batgirl or another character like on their own having to take on a Joker like story on their own, and how you could sort of almost like in wrestling you refer to it as a push where you elevate someone to a new standing where now of course now they're a world champion contender as opposed to just a mid-carder, right? And I feel like you can do that with a comic book character by like giving them that one shot where they take on a villain where they're not supposed to be able to fight but they kind of rise to the occasion, and that's what the story is that they actually rise to the challenge and do it.
I don't know what a mid-carder is, but yes, I agree.
Someone who's in the middle of the show, not the main event.
Right, okay. Sure. No, I get your point here. That I think the thing is that there's... I suspect most of the Bat family, as they are, at a reasonable level, could do a story against the Joker and, come off and go, okay, we managed to survive, but it would be tough. Right?
Oh yeah.
They wouldn't do it easy. They'd scrape through it.
Scarecrow is a mid-card villain, to put it the way I'm saying.
Sure, yeah. Scarecrow's one you can do as the first villain. You can't do that with Joker. You got to build the Joker.
Oh, absolutely. So, no, it's and I think that's why the traps that some writers of Batgirl in the last decade are falling into, because it's been Babs again, is they always have to reference Killing Joke. So we always have to have the hints of the Joker sort of being mentioned, even if he's never the outright villain in the story.
It's why I kind of love James Gordon Jr.
Oh, I like him too a lot, yeah.
In the sense that it gives Babs a really personal villain that can always reference history and such, but is unique to her and is a threat in multiple ways and isn't just the Joker again. I like it a lot.
I feel like there's a real challenge trying to build a rogues gallery for Dick or Barbara or in this case Steph, where for some reason Batman has so many great ones but for some reason they struggle so much to create a new one for some of the other characters. And I get that even the big character, even like Superman and Wonder Woman, don't get new good villains that often, but you know, Batgirl as a concept's been around, and even just as a book has been around since like 2000 ish. So like in all that time we couldn't establish like one character, because even James Gordon Jr. wasn't established in Batgirl. That was established in Detective Comics, and it was a Dick Bat story.
It was established there, and as a Batman story originally, but I think primarily a Barbara villain. Right now,
it makes sense for her to be attached to it. Obviously,
it does, but I think that's probably the only out of any of the Batgirls. That's the only Batgirl villain I could really name.
I mean, I think you could argue Shiva for casting away.
Yeah, but again, it has this thing where the difference between James Gordon Jr. is that he had one story as a Batman villain, and then we molded him into Batgirl pretty quickly after that.
Do you know what I honestly think the problem is with making villains for all these characters is that I think they keep trying to like make villains that specifically like, oh, we'll make some sort of villain that's like a hip trendy villain because that'll particularly feel like a foe for, you know, young Batgirl to take on. And I'm like, just think of a cool villain. Just think of a cool villain, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But eventually, one of them's going to click, and one of them's going to hit that perfect pitch where it's like they're a new villain, and it won't matter. Like they could have been a Batman villain, sure, but they're not. It's Batgirl or Robin who are fighting them.
Do you know what it's kind of like? It's like Deathstroke for the Teen Titans.
In
that you wouldn't go, oh, that's a perfect match for the Teen Titans, right? But no, it just they made it work then, and it stuck.
Yeah, and Deathstroke's still around. He's had his own book for 50 plus issues multiple times. So, like, so just that's basically it. Just stop trying to make something that's like. I feel like they go out of their way to either try and make something that's hip and trendy to go with the younger character, or they'll try and avoid having it be anyone like a Batman villain. I'm like, it's okay if, like, because even some Batman villains have some overlap. It's okay.
It is. I'm thinking like in the Rebirth Nightwing book, was it Rapture was his name, and I think it was a solid character, worked fine, but I think they went too hard to try and make it. No, this is Dick's villain, right? Whereas
they tried to tie it too much into his backstory. Like there was too much. Yeah. Like not every. It's one of my pet peeves actually about storytelling in general, whether it be movies, TV shows, comics. But when you've got established, like standalone movies is not really an issue, but any kind of established characters where they're around for a long time, see when they try and retcon a villain into their backstory, I'm like, stop it, I hate it, because for some reason it's something that so many writers feel the need to do, and even when it's done well, and it, like in this one context maybe it's okay for this character, I'm so sick of writers doing it that it always like there's just a little like.
And I want to make it clear, I don't hate Rapture. I think Rapture was a fine character.
Oh yeah, no, he's fine.
If he comes back, I'll be down for it, but I definitely feel like it's so specific. We have to make this specific to Dick, right? In the same way, in many senses, that James Gordon Jr. is specific to Babs, right? It's her. It's so personal for them, whereas it doesn't. Like the Joker's not personal to Bruce.
No, yeah, exactly.
It's just the Joker. It's fine.
It can become personal to the characters through the story of them encountering the villain. It doesn't have to be something tied to their past. Like, just have them encounter this new villain, and then hopefully, if the story's good enough, we'll associate the villain with that character, and it'll be their new nemesis or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and that all came because Scarecrow showed up for the issue.
Yeah.
But Scarecrow, solid B tier villain to have Steph face off against. Good stuff. So, I think I mean I loved that first issue. This issue was really solid. I wouldn't rate it as highly as that first one.
It's still a great issue, but it's not as strong. No, I mean. It doesn't do anything wrong. It's just not as every beat is fantastic in the first issue. Where this is like, it's good. It's real good.
Yeah, solid 8 out of 10 for me. This issue.
I agree. I want to give a special shout out to the cover for this issue, the Phil Noto cover, because that was like my phone background for like a year and a half. Because I love that cover. It's so good. This is the one with the orange Batgirl, the orange background with Batgirl. Like, I think the yellow boot.
Later on in this series, some of the first ever Art Germ covers I saw pop up.
Oh, really? As variants or regular covers?
I think they were the regular covers, but I mean I could be wrong. But there's a couple of great shots of her in the rain in these covers that are just, and I'm pretty sure they're Art Germ, but it was long before who I knew he was. It was just kind of like in retrospect, I went, oh, that was Art Germ. Must have been.
Yeah. No, I get you.
Anyway, that's Batgirl issue 2, which was the last book of the week. Picking the favourite this week is pretty obvious given the scores. We both rated Batman 404 incredibly highly.
With good reason.
Well,
but yeah, I mean, it's clearly the top issue, right?
yeah.
I mean, JSA has kind of ruled the roost so far, and I think it had its my least favorite issue of it. Not the worst. It's not a bad issue, but my least favorite. And then Batman kind of came in with this.
Yeah, I think Batgirl won for me last time. I think Batgirl's probably my number 2. Well, that and Flash are pretty level-ish. And GSA, like I say, was a solid 7. Birds of Prey Manhunt was around the 7. For me, I think then you have Action at the sort of 6-ish, and then you have Wonder Woman for me at the bottom place.
It's funny because for me, I have Batman top easily, and then Batgirl, and then I have Birds of Prey, JSA, and The Flash all sitting at a 7 that I would have to think about if I was really kind of ranking them out. But they're all like in that range where, yeah, they're good.
Yeah. So there you go. That is the show. We're still discussing what the plans are, whether or not we're going to still launch elsewhere, or maybe even just go weekly with this show. And the reason why, if you didn't know why that's even something we're talking about, why we're debating what to do, is because the digital price for comics in the entirety of Europe shot up. To put it in simple terms for the American listeners, basically all these $4 books became $6 overnight, and but buying a whole other set of like new issues weekly
became a significant burden immediately.
Yeah. Well, because I'm already paying more just for the books I already was reading, because I'm sort of slowly transitioning to physical now because it's actually slightly cheaper to do so. But hey,
before we finish, I know we obviously just mentioned there that Batman was the best book and Wheelers. Do we usually do art on this?
We could start doing art.
I feel like we usually do, but and we've just kind of forgotten. But I don't know.
I mean, if we're picking best art, I mean, it is probably Flash was good, but it's probably between Batman and Batgirl. And I agree. I think I praise Batman a lot, but I do really love that Batgirl art.
I mean, Lee Garbett is fantastic. I love Lee Garbett.
It's really tough. Part of me feels like I should probably give it to Batman because we praised how much of a tone shift it was, and because of in the context of like, whereas we already gave it. I mean, if we did do best art last time, we probably gave it to Batgirl because it was fantastic art.
Yeah, we did. I think I'm going to give it to Batman as well, and I think that's mostly because the colors are so standout. Because when we're talking art here as a whole, we're talking the whole package, not just the pencils or things. We're talking the finished, completed product.
Yeah, coloring, inking, all the whole shebang.
Yeah, I think the colors do push it over the edge.
And layouts as well. Layouts are really important. Layouts are also.
They are, because you get sometimes where you'll get one artist doing the layouts and everyone else doing the finishes, and it can really show when someone else helps with layouts on someone who's maybe weaker on that element.
Yeah, someone who's good at the actual drawing, but isn't necessarily good at mapping out what the thing should be. But you put them together. Well, some people just are good at both, so they just get.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Anyway, that is the show. That is episode 6 of Previously in the Multiverse. So do give us your thoughts on the possibility of either elsewhere in the alternating weeks or just weekly previously. If we do go weekly, I will say this, that there will be weeks off occasionally, but it'll be mostly weekly. But I mean, again, I do want to do elsewhere. I want to read some other books as well ongoing, but maybe another option would be that elsewhere doesn't necessarily become a new issue show and is kind of more of a mix of this and a new like I don't know, like some sort of weird concoction where, like, do we do the Marvel Unlimited schedule where we're just 6 months behind to make it cheap? Just always be 6 months behind on Marvel books. I don't know.
I mean, it's an option.
It's an idea. I'll just throw it out there. Or even just wait for trades to come out, because now the trades are much cheaper. Like the trades, night and day, the trades are cheaper now.
Yeah, the trades have always been cheaper for Marvel, especially. Have always been,
and they're
cheaper.
More expensive now, but they're still fair versus what the single issues are.
It's to the point now where in the the weekly sales and Comixology, Marvel trades, they price differently, whereas DC have always traditionally had like a set price and maybe a higher price for the next tier, whereas Marvel have very consistently priced wildly differently depending on how many issues are in the book.
Yeah, it's just based on page count for the most part.
Yeah, and now the ones with the lower page count are still at a price where I can justify just kind of impulse buying, whereas the DC ones are not anymore.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I think the trade sale prices are still fair if you're actively wanting something. They're completely fair prices to pay for the books. They're just not this is something that used to happen with Steam sales with video games, is that you would just impulse buy like a ton of stuff every time there was a sale because the prices were so cheap, and that kind of went away. And this is the same thing that's happening with comics now, where I used to impulse buy at least DC trades every time there was a DC sale, and now probably not.
Like I said on the show, I've been impulse buying at least 1 or 2 trades every single week for the last 4 or 5 months, and now it's just until this shift, and not a single one since. I did buy a Hulk trade that I needed when they did that, because Comixology is doing flash sales lately.
Yeah, do you know what? I was really bummed about that sale because I have remember when they were doing like those new trades for $1 each and how cheap it was. I had Peter David's Hulk run. I had like volumes 3, 5, and 6 of that. So I really wanted to get like at least 1, 2, 4, so I'd have the first 6 in that sale. But I couldn't justify buying any comics, like extra comics at the time. So I just had to leave it.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think because it was 75% off, it still worked out. Even with the price increase that we had recently, it still worked out reasonable. So I got a couple of things.
Yeah, I mean, the issue count in those books was actually quite good. So even for the 6 instead of £4 per trade that it was still pretty good value. It just isn't as good as it was before.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing where maybe in a year's time, when we're used to this pricing,
maybe
we won't feel it as much, because that's something that that I know has happened in my workplace in the past. So be interesting to see how our moods change.
Yeah, because I mean, for the record, I did. I think I'm technically 1 issue behind in these now because I've not read in a couple of weeks, but I did more or less get caught up in Buffy and Angel. I'm caught up maybe barring the newest issue of Daredevil. I've started catching up in Captain America. And I'll see about, and because one of the ideas that I wanted to do for Elsewhere was I wanted to, and Connor was kind of on board with doing this, was working to do Turtles from issue 1, the IDW series, doing an issue, an episode. So, and I do actually still really want to do that, and I don't want
it is, but at the same time, if people would rather just have this every week.
Yeah, one of the things I was considering is that the 2 voted for slots would alternate, so that the other 2 weeks of the month, we do something else. Or part of me was thinking that we just have an 8th slot and do Turtles there, so I can still read Turtles because I want to read Turtles. It's not DC, but like they've done crossovers with DC. It's relevant.
Sure, whatever.
They're in Injustice too. So it's Hellboy, admittedly. But
I was gonna say, so are a lot of things.
Yeah. That, I mean, between the comic book crossover and then them being in that video game, you know what? Turtles would fit nicely into DC. You know what? They'd slot in quite well.
They did do the animated movie as well.
Yeah, they would slot so happily in, and having like Shredder play off of Ra's al Ghul was just a perfect kind of match for them as well. It was like, the Turtles mythology would just slot so nicely in, especially since DC have all their own cities, so New York's not as populated, so Turtles would just slot right in. That'd be nice.
And to be honest, you could just say it's whatever city you wanted in DC, and just it's not not New York in the same way that Metropolis is not New York.
Oh sure, but I think they could just let Turtles have New York. It's fine.
I mean, you probably could,
yeah. I'd be totally down with that. Turtles teaming up with Teen Titans for a story. Turtles, so many options. Oh man, cast with the Turtles. Oh, that sounds like a fun story. So many possibilities. But by all means, do give us your thoughts and all the suggestions we just gave you there for what we're thinking about. And there is just a possibility of just doing Elsewhere like we said we were going to do to begin with. We're just weighing up if that's, because it's one thing just now when it's okay, it's Buffy, Angel, Hulk, Cap, Daredevil, maybe one other book, but there's going to be new books to try. There's going to be other things we may end up wanting to keep up on, and the price now will be ramping up.
It's a tough thing where we don't want to miss out on all the cool books that we're like, oh well, we would like to have tried that, we would like to try that, and it'll feel weird not talking about them, but it's going to get expensive pretty fast.
Yeah, and obviously with DC, because that is our main show, we do kind of prioritize like trying everything pretty much from the main line, and the Black Label stuff as well. So Yeah, so it is what it is. But yeah, feel free to chime in and what your thoughts on anything we said there. Would you rather just get these episodes more frequent, or do you want to hear us talk about the Turtle series and talk about Hulk and Daredevil and Buffy Angel? And there's going to be a Willow miniseries starting in summer by Mariko Tamaki, who's also taking over Wonder Woman. I'm getting
Tamaki getting busy.
Yeah, Tamaki doing some things I really care about. I'm into it. So.
And that's the thing, like especially with the Buffy ones, I'm going to be reading those either way because I'm committed into that already. So
I'm so pissed because I have them all bought digitally up until the price hike, and now I've got this like, well, do I just start buying them physically now? So now I just have physical Buffy issues starting at issue like 14.
Yeah, I've been getting them all physically the whole time, thankfully. Mainly, honestly, a big part of it was I really like the Kevin Wadder covers, which anyone who listened to the original version of Elsewhere will know is I really love those covers.
Yeah.
Made me go to the shop and get those ones, and I mean, kind of worked out well in the long run for me. It's, even before this, well, the Angel had that soft launch with the physical early.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll probably just start buying them physically for whatever the next issues are.
You can get the whole Willow miniseries because it's just a mini, right?
Yeah, it's just a 5-issue mini, which is fine. I don't think Willow should have it ongoing because that would mean keeping her away from the main book, and it's weird not to have Willow with Buffy for that long. Like, it's fine to have her gone for an arc, but it's
you
weird.
Don't even necessarily need to. You can just say this takes place in between these.
But if it was an ongoing book, though, it would be weird if she was still there with Buffy. If she's because it says she's traveling around the world. Like, I'm okay. Like, okay, it takes place between these two Buffy arcs. Fine, if it's just on a mini. But if it's like no, it's like a 50 issue series. It's like, does it all take place between two Buffy arcs? Like, what?
Yeah, that'd be a bit weird.
Anyway, so yeah, let us know what you think of our thoughts there for that in the comments. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Of course, you can get the show a day early, as well as Comics from the Multiverse, if you're a $5 or above patron. $1, of course, is also highly appreciated if you want to support us for his $1 per month. Over at patreon.com/MailFlashTV, I will take this time to thank our patron producers for the month. Oh, my post-it notes gone. Oh, I'll do it from memory, it's fine. Thank you to David Shaw, Alison M. Fordyce, Cindy Palacios, Tyler Hess, and Talking Superman. I knew them, it's fine. But I usually have a digital post-it note on my desktop.
I really hope you didn't forget anyone there.
No, I'm positive it's 5. So thank you to you guys for being patron producers. I'll have to. What happened to my post-it note? I had a lot of notes in that, actually. I hope they're not all gone. I had a lot of things noted on that for various reasons. But anyway, you can of course get us on Patreon. You can of course get us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. And otherwise, thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics, and behold, praise be our Waffle Queen.